welcome into episode 13 of That Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew, and alongside Isiah, we want to welcome you to That Dynasty Podcast this week. Only 14 days until the playoffs start, and it's a dog fight out here right now in our league. And speaking of dogs, Isiah, I'm sure you feel kind of like you got the crap kicked out of you by a little dog, maybe called COVID right about now, huh?
Yeah, dude, getting worked. Got worked in fantasy football. Got worked with COVID. I lost my wallet this weekend, so just been getting a lot of L's within the last week. So
And you didn't get called on stage during the 1975 concert either. So, big L's all around.
she lied. That's why I'm sick. Is Maddie kissed me. I got kissed a rat. So
Oh yeah, saw that all on TikTok over there. So that makes sense.
yeah.
That was you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess really what it comes down to is when we said last episode that we were socially distancing, we just didn't socially distance enough. So I think that's probably what happened. I think you caught it from me.
Yeah, I talked to Fauci and he recommended we push it back to 7 feet next time. So
Yeah. All right. Well, make sure you move that iPad away. I think I'm probably good now, though. Herd immunity. So, as always, guys, we're super excited to talk about COVID. I mean, this past week, and of course, look ahead at week 13 coming up. But before we do get into everything, make sure to follow us on Twitter and TikTok at That Dynasty Podcast. If you don't have Twitter downloaded, make sure you sign into the Apple App Store and download that app before it is not available any longer. Full videos will be available of our podcast up on our YouTube channel, and we also have our podcast available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Links for those are in the description and in the show notes. And let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to do a majority of the talking today because Isiah is just not feeling 100%. So we're going to go over in this episode some league updates, last week's matchup results, make predictions about this coming week. We, of course, have our MVPs segment. We're going to run down the current playoff hunt and one of our last final power rankings of the season to bring us home. So let's take a look at some league updates. So we only had a couple to go over today. We had a couple name changes. Trevor went from Loser's Corner to Divine Scandal Trinity, which I do need to make a call out on this. Trevor, you actually misspelled scandal, and I'm not sure if it was on purpose or not, but you spelled it Scandle, almost like candle, when it's supposed to be AL at the end. So just putting that out there. This screenshot obviously is, here. So can't change that. But if you feel like changing it by the next episode, I wouldn't blame you at all.
it's tough to judge, and Vikings fans aren't particularly known for their gaping amount of intelligence. So
Man, COVID really is getting to your brain, starting off on fire today. Speaking of Vikings fans, Dan changed his name from Dan's Bent and Dent QBs to Wow, can't even say it. Skull Soldiers. That was right after, I believe, the Thanksgiving Day game, where the Vikings took down the Patriots, and that was actually a really, really good game for Mac Jones. And we'll kind of get more into that a little bit later, but I was impressed by what we were able to see at that game. So ads and drops. There was really only one ad of notice this week. Angie picked up the GOAT, Mike White, quarterback from the Jets. It's everything you look for in a quarterback, and just shows how bad Zach Wilson was when he can step right in and absolutely dominate like he did. I don't have any of his numbers right up in front of me because we're not supposed to talk about him in depth today, but you think if threw for like 3 touchdowns, and I don't know, just Zach Wilson would never.
yeah, and he also got Elijah Moore the ball more than once. So he's got one thing on Zach Attack.
Yeah, Elijah Moore was so surprised. He said he didn't even have a touchdown dance planned. He just improvised and just ran because he was so excited. He was just surprised at everybody else. In the meantime, I think I heard Zach Wilson was on the bench asking Mike White if his mom was in the crowd. Not sure what the correlation was to that. It's just kind of random, but Anyways, moving on. Let's review last week's predictions. You wanna kind of take a little bit of this one?
Yeah. So let's see how many picks Matthew's behind me now. Give me 1 second here while I pull it up.
Actually, we just might want to skip this segment. Actually, now that you mention it, I don't think we need to find out. Um, not important. Not really.
No. Now that I have it pulled up, I think we're ready. So for first match of the week, um, it was me against Topodomo, Andrew's burner account, and I lost by 2 points because I decided to get drunk this weekend and not pay attention too much to fantasy football and left Jerry Judy in my flex. But I would like to have a PSA in that I was planning on I know I would have started Jahan Dotson instead, who had 0 points. So to be honest, I don't think I still would have won. But yeah, Terrell beat me by 2 points. He had great. I mean, pretty much got half his points from two players, and Justin Jefferson and freaking Miles Sanders. I don't know. It's just funny every time I go up against Terrell twice this year in both performances. JJ's completely gone off. But Matthew picked me. He was wrong. I picked up Adomo. I was right. And then throwing Dan's pick here, he picked Topodomo as well, and he was right.
Yeah, I had faith in you, and your drunk butt let me down. Um, so we'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later about closest matchup of the week, less than 3 points deciding them. So I think, you can pretty much say that when in a matchup that close, um, no one was really wrong in their predictions, because they both performed pretty much exactly the same. But yeah, you're right. Jefferson really shone in this one. You had Brian Robinson starting, and he really had a fantastic game. Pacheco looked pretty good. Metcalf and Higgins were both really good. So I'll be interested to see kind of what your outlook looks like if this ends up costing you in the playoff hunt. We'll look into that a little bit, a little bit more later on in the show, perhaps. No spoilers, but I think you both might have lost people in this matchup. He had Aaron Rodgers, and you had Najee, both potentially getting injured for some amount of time. So we'll see what happens. Next matchup
That's interesting.
was Darius versus Andy. Darius plus Slay equals likely versus Kirk wears all the chains. We all predicted that Darius would take the victory on this one. Myself, Isiah, and Dan. And Andy surprised us all with the victory. He actually pulled it out 143 to 137. So actually a solid victory for Andy. Really what it came down to in this case was just consistency from his team across the board, as well as a solid performance from Garrett Wilson, who put up 2 touchdowns with the GOAT, Mike White. And on Darius' side, he still put up under 37 points. Was a really, really solid week for him. Honestly, would have beaten pretty much like 90% of everyone else in the league that week. Just happened to be facing someone who put up more points than him, and that's typically how that goes. But all in all, pretty solid matchup. Second closest matchup of the week.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I didn't see that one coming. Darius has fallen to what, 8-4 now?
Darius is 8-4. He's lost. He did win last week, but this is his fourth loss in the last, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. He's been kind of on a downward spiral here.
And then next, third matchup, we had Seed and Power against Rated IR, King Cobb. And we actually all chose the underdog in Seed and Power. And we all were actually correct in our assessments here. He had some great performances. He had Lamar, did really well. Jalen Waddle, CeeDee Lamb, the 49ers defense. Jonathan Taylor had another bounce back week. And then just a couple of bummer performances for King Cobb with, I don't know how you really start Russ at this point. Tyler Boyd didn't give him a whole lot. And then the Bears didn't help him with a negative -5 points. So, yeah, it's a tough L.
Yeah, he had the last minute sit from Fields. So we had to start Wilson instead, and I'm sure he wasn't happy about and obviously the negative 5 points from the Bears didn't help. If Justin Fields plays this game, he probably wins this matchup because I don't think the Bears defense is having to play as much on the field based on the offense getting a lift for the Bears, which means their defense probably wouldn't give us as many points. And then if he had Fields starting as well, that would have been a difference maker for him. So what could have been, but Eden Power's been winning second week in a row for him, and King Cobb's lost 2 in a row.
Bryce Perkins, who played for the Rams last week, put up more points than Russ. That's insane, dude.
I did see that Russ was the quarterback 33 on the year, and there's 32 teams. So just to put that in perspective.
There's an account on Twitter that is counting the amount of bathrooms in his home compared to touchdowns in the season, and currently he still has more bathrooms in his home than touchdowns. So.
Yeah, doesn't he have PSA? 9 bathrooms and 6 touchdowns or something like that?
So, yeah, it's like 12 bathrooms, dude. It's nuts.
Is it really? Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
That's crazy. But we have here next. We have Trevor.
Actually, I think you might have skipped mine. So we have $96 Fab Bids versus Isiah's Tiny Purse. And we all predicted that $96 Fab Bids myself would win, and we were correct. It was not close. It was 154 to 117. Definitely a little bit of a blowout. I just had a pretty solid week, all in all, but it was capped off by Chris Godwin with 29 points, as well as a solid performance from Amari Cooper, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. As always, they all put up about 15, 16 points. Austin Eckler put up 25 points. So I really just didn't have anyone that majorly flopped. Chiefs defense put up 13 points. So I think that was really what it came down to, is just the consistency of everyone putting up almost double digits, with the exception of Gerald Everett, my tight end, who put up 9.8 points. So, it was close. Angie actually had a decent week from Justin Herbert, had a decent week from Matty Hollins, from Hunter Henry, Christian Watson. Even A.J. Dillon finally showed up for her, but it just wasn't enough to stack it up all the way around.
Yeah, and I saw a note that that's your second week in a row scoring 154-34.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that, but I literally scored the exact same amount of points to the millipoint, 154.34 back-to-back weeks, which that's just, I thought that was a mistake when I was entering it in, but nope, that was super random. And Angie did have a good enough week that she would have actually had the victory in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if she had played half of the league, she would have actually had her third victory this week.
Yeah, Christian Watson's been balling.
Yep, it's a good pick. I know we talked about her picking him potentially too early when we had her on the show, and she was talking about maybe she took him too early, which relation to when she probably could have taken him. Yeah, I think he still went too early, but he is showing off. Showing that he's definitely worth probably going higher in dynasty drafts next season for sure.
Yeah, and I'd always argue I think it's better to reach on a rookie a little bit slightly rather than someone a little bit older, because you can always bet on. There's always that potential with him that you don't really know about, in their youth. So I like that route she took. And then next matchup we had Trevor going up against Team Joni One. And me and Dan both picked Trevor, and you picked Team Joni One, and you were wrong by about almost 40 points. There's a man by the name of Josh Jacobs who resides in the city that I currently live in. And he put the Raiders on his back. We'll touch more of that here in a second. But him and Stevenson's and Cousins practically would be just Team Joni One himself.
Yeah, I just don't know what happened there. Oh, I know what happened is Joe Mixon sat out and Mike Williams sat out. So those two guys sitting definitely impacted those projections. And then Trevor outscored his projections by 30 points. So really, really awesome week from Trevor. Definitely surprised me. I thought it was going to be much closer than it was. Well-earned victory. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but getting back into the playoff hunt. All right, so the last matchup of the week was between the two brothers, Dan and Mike the Tank Sullivan.
The battle of who could score the least amount of points.
If this was golf, they would be winning. So the predictions pre week had let's see, I picked Dan, and Dan also picked Dan to win. And Isiah, you picked Mike in the Love Boat incident. I think potentially you may have been unaware that he was tanking when you picked him to win. And we can talk about this in a minute, but Dan ended up winning 81.6 to 80.54. So actually, when I said that your matchup was the closest matchup, I actually lied. This was the closest matchup if you even want to consider it a matchup. I just totally overlooked it because I forgot about it with how low scoring the matchup was. It was pretty bad that Dan was actually trying and Mike was purposely trying to lose and ended up still almost winning.
Well, it's not like he was purposely trying to lose, but like, if Travis Etienne has like 3 or 4 more snaps, he probably wins.
I'm pretty sure if Travis Etienne has a reception for positive yards, he wins.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, which is nuts. I mean, he had 3 guys on his team who didn't even play, and he lost by less than like about a point.
Yeah, it was just insane. Because on the other side, Dan had Damian Pierce, who should have smashed in this matchup, put up 4 points. Kamara, 5 points. Kamara's looking like just a huge bust right now. Curtis Samuel looks so bad with Heineke. There's no connection there. He was used as a running back in this game. He had 4 carries for 13 yards, no targets. We got Jawan Johnson, who had a goose egg, 0 for 2. And granted, I think that there was a touchdown pass that Taysom Hill had thrown to him that was either called back because of a penalty or something like that. So it wouldn't have actually been 0 for 2, but still put up a goose egg. And so, had all those guys letting him down. And then on the other side of things, we had Treylon Burks, who went off 70 yards. He actually recovered a fumble from Derrick Henry and then scored a touchdown on it. So this super random stat line, but he had 4 receptions for 70 yards. And then Derrick Henry on the 1 yard line doesn't see this guy coming up from behind him, has the ball stripped out of him, out of his arms. The ball rolls into the end zone. Treylon Burks dives on it and then scores the touchdown. So he got all the points for that. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown had a great game too on the other side. So this was actually, it was a closer matchup than we would have thought going into it. And kept Dan's playoff hopes alive with the absolutely low score there. So I think that was the last matchup of the week. I want to go over the totals. Let's see what we got here. So Dan, for his first week putting in some picks, went 5-1. Fantastic start. Actually beat both of us in his predictions. So nice job there, Dan. I went 3-3. So, I was right half the time, wrong half the time. And of course, Isiah is still the master. 4-2, 4 wins, 2 losses for your picks. Nice job. On the year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got 38 wins. I got 45. So you're 7 behind me, and Dan is about 40 behind me, and 3 behind you. So maybe we'll catch up a second by the time we're done here with the way you pick.
Yeah, I was going to say at this rate, he's going to catch up to me in no time. While we're still talking about the last week's matchups, let's go over our MVPs for those matchups before we talk about this upcoming week. So my My bench MVP is actually going to be from your team, Isiah, Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver for the Patriots. So I hate to say it, man, but like not paying attention to your roster this week may have cost you a shot at the playoffs. And starting Judy, who was ruled out, ended up costing you when the game was only decided by 2 points. An easy start could have been Aguilar, who had 18.5 points, 6 receptions for 65 yards and a touchdown. We'll see how this week plays out for you, but that could be one costly choice. Now, I know you said you were planning on starting Dotson if you weren't starting Judy. So, like, obviously that could have not, made much of a difference either way in that regards. But when it comes to bench MVPs, man, always got to talk about what could have, should have, and would have been. And if we had put Aguilar in there,
maybe if the Pats had played on Sunday, would have been a little bit different. But it was Thursday game, and I was gonna take my shot there with Judy, but whatever. That's on me, dude. I messed up that. You want to do your MVP? I'm gonna already guess who it is.
Yeah, so MVP, I mean, really, with the dominating performance like this, you really couldn't go anywhere else. But my MVP for the week was Josh Jacobs, running back for Las Vegas. After popping up on the injury report right before the game time, Josh Jacobs ended up having the game of his life. Trevor owns Jacob and won this matchup 144.36 to 106.32. The matchup might not seem close, but it was mainly because Josh Jacobs put up 48.3 points of that to really blow out this victory for Trevor. With 33 carries, 229 yards on the ground, and 2 touchdowns, accompanied by 6 receptions for another 74 yards in the air. And Jacobs is now the running back 1 on the season. I think we've actually talked about him. This is probably the 3rd or 4th time we've talked about him as either a bop or as an MVP. Just been an absolutely killer season for him.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm gonna get as Darius says, he's gonna get a purse this off season. That's for sure.
If you had to guess, what would you say his points per game is averaging in our league?
Ooh, 21.
Yeah, 21.9.
21. Can
Fun
you do
fact.
some
Fun fact, though, he's actually not the running back 1 on points per game basis this year. The running back 1, can you guess who it is?
Is it the player that I traded you for Coppets?
It is. Austin
Moving
Eckler
on.
is
Moving on.
points per game.
Moving on.
Anyways, I thought that was interesting. Also, the number 3 points per game running back this season is Derrick Henry, and I own both of Henry and Eckler. So,
Okay. Yeah, nobody asked. Moving on. My MVP is Miles Sanders. After being a bust the last 2 weeks and just a primarily inconsistent running back, he unfortunately came through, and unfortunately, he came against me. And he rushed for 143 yards on 21 carries, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 3 receptions for 17 yards for a total of 31 points. In a week I lost by about 2 points. That one really pissed me off the most. Justin Jefferson's a dog, bro, especially for football, I think. So it is what it is. But Miles Sanders putting up 31 points, that's just annoying, dude.
it's insult to injury right there. He's in the, I want to say, running back 13 on the season right now. So he's almost a top 12 running back, almost that RB1 status, which is absolutely crazy considering how written off he was this year and how low of a pick. I think I was the one who traded Sanders away for a pretty decent value in Hall. But, when I drafted him, it was kind of like, well, I guess I'll take Miles Sanders because there's no one else here in this range. And, it ended up working out pretty well.
Bench MVP is Mr. Elijah Moore. A little bit of a bounce back week for Moore here with the Mormon MILF Hunter out. He had 2 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown, total of 14 fantasy points. Love boat incident could have literally started anyone over Jamar Chase, and half the roster had scored 0 points. He would have won. But like, this is such a weird bench MVP because he was trying to lose. So it's almost like it's a negative bench. Like, I don't know. Like, if he'd wanted to win, which he didn't want to do, he should have started Elijah Moore. but he made the right call in his decision. He was trying to lose. Like
that is pretty weird to think about. So, and Elijah Moore, don't forget, he also had the -4 rushing yards too.
oh, how could I forget? How could I forget?
Yeah, don't want to forget that.
Um,
Let's take a look
we
at
want to do some
our predictions here.
sweet. So first, we got Angie's burner count, which is me, against Skull Soldiers Dan. I'm sorry, School Soldiers. I'm coming in at 5-7. Dan's coming at 6-6, and I actually believe I'll pull off the upset this week. I have family in town, so I don't think there'll be a whole lot of alcohol being passed around, and I am pretty sure I'll be able to check my lineups. Um, but no, I'm more worried about Kamara's availability and production against the top three run defense with Tampa right now. I like what my receivers have been really doing of late with Higgins and Metcalf. And I think my running back should get a pretty decent amount of looks this week. Hopefully, Najee comes back. I saw today that it looks like he's should be playing. And then I imagine Pacheco should get a bunch of looks again. CH is on IR, and I think Jared McKinnon's a little bit banged up. And then see what I get at B-Rob, but I like my chances. I need to win this week if I want to get into the playoffs. So.
Yeah, I think we saw last week what Dan's roster is capable of, and I think that you definitely will have my vote this week as well. I think that even if Harris doesn't play, you still have Robinson and Akers, McKinnon. You have a few different options you could sub in there to kind of fill the void. In some of those flex spots if Judy doesn't play. And the reason why I'm like, okay, you're making up for it with Prescott's been playing really, really well lately. You have Metcalf and Higgins. And Metcalf and Higgins alone, I think those two guys are enough to carry you through because on the other side, he's only got Cooks and Pittman who have just been disasters. Kamara's been really, really bad against Tampa Bay's run defense. And then Damian Pierce hasn't looked good recently. And I could see a situation where they can't really run the ball very much because they're losing so badly. And that's what's been happening a lot recently is they've just been so far behind. They can't give the ball to Pierce, even good matchups, because they can't afford the clock running out. And then Jawan Johnson's always a risk. So I think from an overall team perspective, I think it probably will be close, but Dan's capable of his team absolutely, hitting their floor. And I think your team is capable of outlasting him there. So I think by the end of this week, you'll have another victory, which will keep you in the playoff hunt.
And Darius and Andy as well picked me, correct?
Yep. So we actually had Darius, Andy, and Dan give us picks for this week. So Darius, Andy, myself, and Isiah are all rooting for Isaiah's team this week. Angie's burner account. Dan did root for himself. He thinks he's going to pull out the victory. And I think you kind of got to root for yourself in that scenario where you're projected to win and hope that your team doesn't fall flat on its face again.
I respect it. Next, we got Darius against Team Joni 1. Darius is 8-4, coming against 5-7 Team Joni 1, and I think he wins this one pretty handily. He's actually projected to win by about 25 points. We've talked about this week after week, but anytime you can run out Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, it's a pretty decent recipe for success. Interested to see if maybe Swift gets some more snaps. Jamal Williams has been stealing all of his red zone touchdowns. But yeah, I got Darius win this one.
Yeah, I have him winning as well. And when it comes down to it, like there's only 3 teams that are projected to put up close to 150 points right now in this league. And Darius is one of those teams. So I think that, rooting against him, unless he's playing another team that's, potentially has that ceiling, or maybe I should say potentially has that floor, just probably isn't the safest bet. So I'm going to have to root with Darius as well. And, kind of what it comes down to for me is looking at, the combination of Allen and Diggs, Andrews and Kelce. That's enough to carry the team more than, on the other side, we have Hurts, Montgomery, Mixon, and Myers. Gabe Davis. Okay, so I could see Gabe Davis because any time that Allen throws to Gabe Davis, it's going to benefit on the Gabe Davis side. But everyone else, like Darius is starting Keenan Allen. On the other side, he's, Team Goni One's going to be starting Palmer. So like that's going to be potentially, contradictory right there. We don't know if Mixon's going to play. Potentially, I heard Jacoby Myers might be sitting out. So, there's just a lot of question marks up in the air for the roster here. And I don't think that it's going to be enough for Team Goni One to pull this one out. I think he'll have a decent week. He'll probably outscore half the league, but he's not going to beat Darius. So, Andy, Dan, Isiah, myself, all root for Darius this week. And Darius himself actually thinks Goni One's going to pull out the victory against him. And I forgot to actually mention this, but Dan actually typed up a little bit on some of these matchups as well. So he said the exact same thing we said. He said Allen, Diggs, Andrews, and Kelsey, just too much to overcome. So that's the thoughts there.
Sweet. Third matchup we got.
But Darius wouldn't root for himself.
It's a fair commission. I respect it. We know we both know he's capping. Next matchup we got host over here, Buster Jacoby against rated IR. We got 2-9-3 squads fighting for the best or top record in the league. But yeah, I think you got in the bag, Matt. Unfortunately for King Cobb, he's got both James Conner and D Hop on bye weeks, and not to mention Ertz and Cup are still obviously in IR, which really changed the trajectory of the season. I think everyone's gonna have a tough time keeping up with your squad for the rest of the year, and I think King Cobb takes the L this week and take the.
Yeah, I think I appreciate the vote of confidence. Projections aside, I think that I do have a good chance of putting this one away. Currently 9-3. I've won 7 in a row. So like that's been pretty cool to see. And the trades that I moved at the deadline really solidified what I've been able to put forward every week. Whereas on the other side of things, King Cobb, unfortunately, has had some rough breaks as of recently with Cup and Ertz going out onto the IR. And then this week I'm facing him when he's got Connor, on bye week, Hopkins on bye week, which he traded for, and then Fournette, who had been a solid force up to this point, injured, potentially losing his starting job. So what was, starting off extremely strong, he's on a 2-game losing streak, and I expect that to continue this week. The one person who does not expect that to continue this week is Darius. He actually did put in a vote for King Cobb take this one. Going a little contrarian, I think, but myself, you, Andy, and Dan all are rooting for $96 fab bids in this one. And the verbatim from Dan here was the wide receiver flex talent for $96 fab bibs, just so much. The only question of this matchup is, does he start Watson over Brady? So that is the good question. Watson is back first week off of his 2-year hiatus, and he's playing Houston. So biggest thing for me is that Houston is a matchup that is designed to crush fantasy production from a quarterback, not because they're good at covering the quarterback or wide receivers, but because they start losing so badly that most teams pull their starters out of the game. As we saw last week when, the Dolphins pulled out their starters by halftime. So that's the situation that we're going to find ourselves in. Potentially, it's just not a great matchup for Watson. It's going to be a Nick Chubb game for sure. And it's going to be just absolutely pound the living daylights out of the Texans. So I'm starting Brady this week. We'll see how Watson looks. I'm also sitting Amari Cooper for that same reason. I don't know what the production is going to look like first week with the new quarterback and against a team that is terrible to the run. That's my takeaway from starting Watson this week. Next matchup.
We got Team Saving Power against Isiah's Tiny Purse. Saving Power is projected to win by about 40 points over Angie. That shouldn't be too much to overcome for her. I mean, dude, I think you and him currently have the 2 best rosters. I'm looking over his right now. I see CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel just at receiver. It's pretty damn elite. Not to mention he has Jonathan Taylor and was it Dalvin Cook as well. It's pretty fantastic. So
Yeah, and it's not that Angie's team hasn't been performing over expectations recently, because they definitely have been.
Yeah.
But there's just a different caliber of players when she's rolling out Donovan Peoples-Jones, Hunter Henry and Alan Lazard versus Jalen Waddle and the company. So Seton Power is probably going to take this one. He's won 2 games in a row. He's really put himself in a position. If he wins this week, which is a really good matchup for him, if he wins this week, he will clinch a playoff spot, which we'll talk about a little bit more of that later on. But this is a clean sweep. All 5 of us project that Seton Power is going to take this one. Myself, you, Andy, Darius, and Dan.
Sweet. Next, we got the Divine Scandal Trinity, or maybe it's Scandile, with the way it's spelled. Versus Kirk Wears All the Chains. We got 2, 5, and 7 teams trying to fight for playoff start. And unfortunately for Andy, I don't think he currently has a QB on his roster who's going to start this week. Sounds like Zach Wilson most likely will still be on the sidelines. I think Andy comes up a bit short because of that. But should be a close one.
Yeah, that's a really good call out. The notes that Dan put in here is that Andy has a better team top to bottom, but if he doesn't get a quarterback and Jacobs outperforms CMC, then Trevor's going to take it. He did say that if Andy gets a quarterback, this could be a flip, but I think Trevor's going to take it. And what I'm kind of leaning the same way. It's just like with a matchup that's designed to be that close, and you're giving up such a large amount of points. It doesn't matter how good Ken Walker does; it's not going to be able to overcome just the consistent points over the course of that entire matchup right there. So I'm going to have to give this one to Trevor. But I mean, listen, you could see miracle games happening from Cordell Patterson and Hawkinson and Smith, and it could end up being that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I practically won a matchup earlier this year where I didn't start a quarterback, and it wasn't because I didn't start a quarterback. It was just that my quarterback sucked so badly that they put up less than 5 points. So it felt like I didn't start a quarterback, and I still ended up winning. So I mean, it's possible to pull out these victories without a quarterback. But I'm going to have to go with my gut on this one, which says that Divine Scandali Trinity will take this one. Okay, so just the last matchup that we got to go over for this upcoming week. We have Team T-Podomo, which we do have clarification now. That is how it is pronounced, T-Podomo, which is kind of a mix between Topodomo and T-Podomo, as we both were saying. So I think I was definitely the closest, but
No. It was 60-40 my way, pal.
T-Podomo. No, definitely not. Versus the Love Boat Incident. Terrell's team name is Reverend Big Cheese. Isiah, what you got for this matchup?
Yeah, we don't need to go into this too deep in this. Terrell 6'6", Love Boat's 5 and 7. Love Boat is obviously tanking. I think Terrell wins this one pretty easily. Just because Love Boat's going to start his worst players, it sounds like, if he does start his players. So, yeah, Topo will win this.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same board. I don't know what I'm trying to say. We're all on board with that as well. The notes from Dan was bust for Bijan Robinson. Going to be probably the 101 in rookie drafts next year. And it's kind of funny that he says that because we all know that he really has no chance of beating Angie for the worst roster or the worst record. So at this point, he's just going for the best that he can. Though also worst part, Angie doesn't even own her own pick, so she's not even benefiting from this. It's a lose-lose all around.
Yeah, I think Cena Powers got her pick, right?
Yeesh. I think that he definitely swindled somebody out of that pick. Let's see if it's him.
Yeah.
Cena Power does have her. That is the only first round pick. That's the only pick he owns until 2015. 2025.
Wow. Well, it's most valuable pick um, out of all of them right now. So
Yeah, his team is still stacked. I don't understand. Dude, he's sitting Mike Evans on the bench. He has Rashad White on his taxi squad still. Hasn't even activated him. Um, it's just stacked. Stacked team. All
that's
right.
impressive.
So let's take a look at where we're at sitting wise for the. Oh, I should mention that I think I might have already mentioned it, but everybody thinks that Reverend Big Cheese is going to take the victory for this week. For the previous matchup, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but Darius has Trevor taking this one. Dan has Trevor taking this one, and oh yeah, we did mention that because he talked about how Andy doesn't have a quarterback, and then Andy himself thinks that Trevor's going to win because Kyler Murray's on a bye and Zach Wilson is a freaking bum and got benched and he's out of quarterbacks, he said. So
All true statements.
yeah, all true. So let's look at the playoff picture now and kind of take a look at this here. So we actually have had 3 teams that have clinched playoff spots officially. So right now we got King Cobb rated IR, 9-3. Myself, $96 Fab Bids at 9-3, and Darius at 8-4. We've all clinched the first 3 playoff spots. Now, the way that our playoffs are set up is that it is the top 6 that make it to the playoffs, and the first round of the playoffs is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So the first round of the playoffs, the top 2 seeds actually have a bye, and they automatically make it to round 2, where they face the champion of the first 2 matchups. So the way that it looks right now is that King Cobb and myself would actually be the top 2 seeds, and we would get the first 2 buys. And then there would be a matchup between Seed and Power and Dan, and Terrell and Darius. And I would basically face the winner of Terrell versus Darius, and King Cobb would face the winner of Seed and Power versus Dan. Then the winners of those matchups would go to the championship in week 17. So that's the way that it's set up currently right now. So that means that there is week 13 and week 14 that are still going to count before going into the playoffs. So right now in the hunt for the playoff spots is pretty much everyone in spots 4 through 11. Talk me through what you're seeing here, Isiah.
Yeah, that loss I took this week really stung, man. I'd be in either 6th or 5th or 6th spot right now, going up against School Soldiers. But I still have a decent chance. I obviously have to win this week. What I do have going for me is if I do pull this off this week, I'll be somewhere probably between like 5th and 7th in the standings or whatever. And then I don't want to say I have a bye next week, but I'm playing Love Boat Incidents tanking. So if I can just win this week, I like my chances of going 7-7, and that puts me in that conversation of either that 5th or 6th spot, which is all I'm trying to get into there, because once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. But that last one definitely took a hit. Love Boat's obviously tanking. I think Trevor probably moves to 6-7 on the year, so he puts himself in a better situation. Topo Domo's probably gonna be 7-6. I don't know.
And so like really what it's going to come down to right now for this week, right, is it's you versus Dan. And so when I look at we talked about Terrell, he's facing the Love Boat incident, so that's probably going to be a dub for him. So Terrell, if he moves up to 7-6, that's going to be putting him almost out of reach. Dan, is going up against you, and so Dan is 6-6, and you're 5-7. If Dan beats you and he moves up to 7-5, I'm pretty sure he clinches. At that point, especially if Terrell loses. So if Terrell Terrell loses for sure, and Dan wins. Dan clinches. But yeah, for like this is going to be a big week for you. Like you got to win, and I know you have a chance. But one win, one loss, and I think that the odds are stacked against you at that point. Andy is ahead of you right now, and he's projected to lose this week because he has no quarterback. He's projected to lose to Trevor, who is also tied with you. So, like the way that I'm thinking about this is like Trevor could move up to 6-7, you could move up to 6-7, and then Andy drops down below you guys to 5-8. And then Team Goni 1 is projected to lose as well, versus Darius. So he would drop down to 5-8. And then we think the Love Boat Instant is going to lose as well at 5-8. So that would leave basically you and Trevor, and you guys would be fighting, right in that 7-8 spot. Potentially, tied with Dan, trying to get into that 6th spot. And
yeah, and not to jump forward too much, but looking into not this week coming up, but the week after, I got to pull that. So I'm playing Love Boat, right? So that's why I was feeling okay with my chances because I know he's taken. Unfortunately for Trevor, he's playing Darius, so that's going to be a real tough matchup because he needs to win out as well. Odds likely to make it. You play Seed and Power from people trying to get in the playoffs. We don't care about what happens with that. Maybe people prefer to play certain people, but and then Andy against Team Joni 1. That could have some playoff implications, depending on how Andy / Joni 1 does this week. And then for me, obviously, I have Team Joni 1's first round pick, so I'm continuing to root against them. And then lastly, the 2 6-6 teams right now are playing each other the last week with Topo Domo and Dan Sullivan, the Skull Soldiers and Reverend Big Cheese. So I mean, that one I'd argue. So whatever happens this week, that game right there is probably the most important of that week because whoever wins that game is probably making the playoffs, or maybe almost even guaranteed. Because whoever wins that will be at least 500.
Yeah, and I think like if you lose this week, it's gonna clinch the playoffs for Dan, and then that would make it really, really hard for you to also win with Terrell coming in for that 6th spot, because Terrell looks like he's going to take a victory. So if Dan takes the victory and Terrell takes the victory, then that's going to be 3 teams with 7 victories, and I think that actually clinches everybody else.
Yeah, I'd almost argue that you have to be 500 to make it, because Topo Domo or Dan's going to have one of the spots, and it's pretty much whether it's Dan or Topo Domo doesn't make it, it's going to be then me, Andy, Team Joni 1, Trevor fighting out for that last spot, depending on what happens this week. So
yeah, it'd be cool to see the updates, but like we're projecting Seed and Power to win this week versus Angie, so that will clinch his spot for sure with that 8th win. And so then what we're looking for then is just those final 2 spots, and it's going to come down to the wire for who sneaks in. But there's some big implications because for anyone that's 5-7 right now, a loss is an elimination.
Yeah.
That's just what it comes down, just mathematically, unless every single person that's 5-7 loses, in which case, no, actually that would still automatically put pretty much everyone that's currently 6-6 in there.
Yeah, because Trevor and Andy are both 5-7. They're going up against each other. So that one of those, whoever loses, is automatically eliminated.
Yeah.
And then me and Dan Sullivan, obviously. So if I lose to Dan, I'm done. And then if I win, I'm in the same spot as Dan. And then depending on who scored more points, we'll be at that point in the standings. But it's pretty cool, dude. There'll actually be some pretty fun matchups here next couple of weeks with stuff going down the wire and a couple of points determining your season. So
it's just interesting the drop off there, like so many teams competing for the final spot of like who can lose the first round of the playoffs. It's like But you never know,
Man, we say that, dude. One week. That's why I've always kind of been a proponent of the 2 week playoffs, and earlier playoffs. But dude, like you get a couple guys go off, and you get a guy or two has a rough game / gets injured, and you're cooked. Even though you had the best team in the league. So luck of the draw sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've definitely played in a couple of those leagues, and it's super frustrating. When like the first week you crush it, and the second week you don't, you're like, oh my word. Like, I kind of like the nerves of it, but like if you want a more fair experience, then that's where the 2 week playoff is kind of cool. And I play in a bunch of best ball leagues where they just take your best points scored anyways, and it doesn't matter like matchups or anything like that. And so I like kind of like the I see the benefits of all of it. I played in all the different types of the leagues. But I think something about coming back always to like the one single matchups is like you're putting everything on the line, and it's a lot more high risk for sure. But I think that also increases a lot of like the fun with it. But yeah, it's cool to see everything coming right down to the wire, and I'm excited to talk about next week. And next week will be our final power rankings. This week right now we'll move into that right now, but we'll talk about our week 13 power rankings. And yeah, it's coming right down to the end, man. That's going to be interesting to actually have less content to talk about and be able to really dive into some more of these matchups and projections and things like that, because we'll only have 4 matchups to talk about at a time. So that'll be kind of cool. And
Yeah.
and it'll give us a little bit of a different feel to it, and maybe we can have some guests on talking about their odds and their chances for those shows. But with that being said, let's talk about our week 13 power rankings. So we'll start at the bottom with no change. Isiah's tiny purse, number 12 in the power rankings. But then coming in at number 11, where he wants to be, is Mike, the Love Boat Incident, coming in at number 11 now, dropping 2 spots in the power rankings this week. And then we have Isiah, Angie's burner account, coming in at number 10 in the power rankings. You actually were number 10 last week, so you didn't move at all. Number 9 this week, which is up 2 spots from last week, is Divine Scandali Trinity, Trevor's team, up to number 9. Then number 8, we have Skull Soldiers, which is Dan, and he's sitting at number 8, which is down 2 spots from last week. Then we have coming in here number 7, Kirk Wears All the Chains, and that's Andy's team. Number 7 in the power rankings, up 1 spot from last week. At number 6, we have Team Goni 1. He's been falling. Last couple weeks, he's been falling. He's at number 6 now. That's down 1 spot. Coming in at number 5 is Reverend Big Cheese Terrell, climbing 2 spots this week. Number 5 in the rankings. Number 4, and honestly, the top 4 actually haven't changed since last week. So we have Seed and Power at number 4. We have Rated IR at number 3. We have Darius plus Slay equals Likely at number 2, and I am still holding on to the number 1 spot, $96 Fab Bids. And I think that a few of the losses in there, but also the projections for this week and the overall wins for the year is what's keeping those rankings relatively the same. But if you look at the actual power ranking scores, they actually have fluctuated a little bit since last week. That's our power rankings. And that's also the wrap for this week's episode. So guys, as always, please be sure to like and comment on the video if you're watching this on YouTube. Shout out to anyone who has been commenting so far and being consistent in that area. I'll give Andy a shout out. He's been pretty good about commenting as well, so thank you for that. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, please leave us a rating, a review. It really does help us get our name out there a little bit more. And follow us on TikTok and Twitter to stay up to date with our latest content and interact with us as well. I know we haven't posted on TikTok in a little bit, but our TikTok content creator will be on that, I'm sure. Patriots this week versus the Bills tomorrow night. How you feeling about it?
Bills win that one easily. But I'm rocking the red, white, and blue right now for my my beautiful American boys right now are putting in work in the World Cup, playing the Netherlands this Saturday. That's where my emphasis lies, and should be a good game. I'm actually a pretty avid soccer fan. Really big in the Premier League and Champions League and whatnot, and been pretty impressed with the boys so far. And I'm glad that Pulisic still has both of his little what's the politically correct term here? He's got both of his balls left.
Gems?
His gems. Yeah. So yeah, I'm hoping for a win Saturday morning against Netherlands, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'll be honest, man. I have not been following at all, other than I know that we USA won the first matchup a couple days ago. But that's all I know.
So yeah, they won their so there's different groups. In each group there's 4 teams. The top 2 teams move on, and we were the second team, so we moved on. All we had to do is beat Iran, and we did. Our defense has been great. Our offense has been kind of spotty, but we're also the youngest team in the World Cup. All of our kids are young, which is good moving forward. We're finally starting to put more money and stuff into the soccer program, or football as everyone else calls it. But yeah, I'll stop going on a tangent here, but talk about the real American football.
Well, I do think, to go back to the Patriots here, I do actually think the Patriots have a better shot at this in this game than we think. The Bills' defense has been getting progressively worse and worse as every week goes on. They've been losing people left and right. They lost Von Miller in the last week's game. So they've been dropping like flies, and they've actually started to give up a ton in the secondary. And so Mac Jones showed what he can do against a weakened secondary last week against the Vikings. They've had a full week of rest, and they're going to be, wanting to show up against their division rivals. So I think that Mac Jones will actually keep this competitive. I don't think the Bills will actually destroy them in this game. And also Josh Allen just hasn't really looked himself lately. His elbow seems to be bothering him still. The first half of the game last week, he was like 7 for 17 completions, or 7 for 13 completions. It was something really, really bad, not like him. He ended up turning it around by the end of the game, but they barely beat the Vikings, and that shouldn't have been close. So I think, wait a second, I've said the Vikings multiple times. So who did the Bills play last week that they barely beat?
I don't even remember, dude.
All I remember it was on it was the Lions. That makes more sense. They shouldn't have been close against the Lions, and they just barely beat them, final drive of the game. So yeah, I like our chances this week, and Ramondre has been playing great, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
You didn't make a pick.
I did. I think the Patriots are going to win this one.
You think that? Wow. All right, you gave like 8 reasons why they should, but I never got the definite. You think they will, but all right, dude. I mean, you're not too hot when it comes to picks, so that selection doesn't surprise me too much. So,
well, I gotta root for the boys. Okay, gotta root for them.
It's true.
But that's going to do it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to that Dynasty podcast. On behalf of myself and my co-host Isiah, we will see you next week.